Greetings, dear viewers, ladies and gentlemen. This is AddisDialogue, a program that deals with current issues unfolding in Ethiopia and in the whole world. In this edition, we'll be talking about the second Russia-Africa Summit. I'm joined by His Excellency Ambassador Evgeny Terekhin. He's the Russian ambassador to Ethiopia with the program. I'm Shifara Olako. Do stay with us. Ambassador, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for your invitation.
Absolutely. So, as I said in my intro, sir, the second Russia and Africa Summit and Economic and Humanitarian Forum is slated to take place in St. Petersburg, your wonderful nation in Russia, from July 26 to 29. So, what is this summit going to be all about, sir? Let's first start with this.
Well, as we have already mentioned, the second Russia-Africa Summit and Russia-Africa Humanitarian and Economic Forum will take place at the end of July in St. Petersburg, in the city which we call the northern capital city of Russia. We view this event as a systematic element of Russia-Africa cooperation. We are filling it with meaningful content in close cooperation with our African friends. Comprehensive preparations for this milestone event are being carried out in difficult geopolitical circumstances and conditions against the backdrop of tectonic shifts in global politics and economy. Despite pressure from West, a significant number of African countries have already confirmed their participation in this event. We believe that the second summit and forum will constitute a landmark in Russian-African relations, determine their development in the coming years, and contribute to building a more just, multipolar world order. Russian President Vladimir Putin is open to bilateral contacts and negotiations with all African leaders on the sidelines of this summit, with all of them who will come there. Among the topics planned for discussion are practical solutions to ensure an uninterrupted development of trade, economic and humanitarian cooperation, including the building of new logistics chains and systems of foreign trade payments. The key elements of the agenda will also include food, energy and other dimensions of security, technology transfer, healthcare and education. In Russia, the years 2022-2031 are declared the decade of science and technology. Our country pays special attention to the transfer of Russian technologies and education to Africa. Russia perceives the African states as equal partners interested, together with our country, in the transition to a high technological economy. African partners constantly emphasize that what they need from Russia is technologies that will allow them to overcome economic problems and turn from being objects into being subjects of the world economy and international relations. This includes, above all, cooperation in the field of security, medicine, biodiversity, geology and processing of minerals, energy, construction, transport, ecology, agriculture and water resources, space, information technology and the humanities. One of the main topics of the summit and forum will also be the education and training of African personnel, increasing the number of scholarships for studying at Russian universities, opening branches of Russian universities and schools in Africa, and implementing joint initiatives in the fields of education and science. So I have no doubt that the summit will strengthen Russian-Africa cooperation, provide a vector for the development of the entire range of relations with Africa in a mid-term perspective, and make a tangible contribution to the effective resolution of regional and international issues.
Wow, obviously this is going to be a huge summit and lots of areas are going to be discussed. Ambassador, thank you so much for that wonderful piece of information. Moving on from there, Ambassador, how do you describe Russia's foreign policy towards Ethiopia in particular and Africa in general?
Well, the development of a comprehensive partnership with Africa and the African countries remains one of the top priorities of Russia's foreign policy. That was further reflected and stressed in recently updated concept of Russian foreign policy. Russia defends the political interests of the countries of the continent, upholds their independence and the right to make sovereign decisions, and advocates the expanded representation of Africa in the United Nations Security Council and the Group of 20, the so-called G20. These issues will be raised during the upcoming summit. Russia has consistently advocated Africa's strengthened position in the multipolar architecture of the world order, which should be based on the principles of the UN Charter and take the world's cultural and civilizational diversity into account. In this context, we welcome the successful development of African integrational structures. We consider the launch of African continental free trade area as an important step towards the true economic independence of the continent, its final liberation from any manifestations of discrimination and coercion. Russia stands in solidarity with African states in their desire for a more equitable polycentric world and elimination of social and economic inequality, which is growing due to the sophisticated neo-colonial policies of some developed states towards Africa. Russia is ready to assist in every possible way in strengthening the sovereignty of African states and in defending the principle of sovereign equality. As the outcome of the second international parliamentary conference Russia-Africa, which was held in March this year in Moscow, have clearly demonstrated the Russian Federation and the states of the African continent are united in their striving for the formation of a fair world order based on the principles of respect for international law, multipolarity, consideration of national interests, indivisibility of security, and the central coordinating role of the United Nations. In this context, it is important to highlight the special emphasis we place on our cordial and friendly relations with Ethiopia, one of Russia's key partners in Africa. Russia and Ethiopia share a deep historical connection characterized by cultural and spiritual affinity. Despite political, economic, and social challenges which were facing our two countries at different points of their history, our two nations have stood together united by a common bond. Over the course of 125 years, diplomatic relations between our countries have been growing steadily and have resulted in strong cooperation and in a wide range of spheres. The higher level of our current political dialogue and the increasing economic interaction exemplify our shared commitment to strengthening multifaceted cooperation. We aspire to deepen collaboration in various areas, including political affairs, trade and investment, energy and infrastructure, culture, education and tourism. The breadth of our engagement reflects our mutual desire to deepen fraternal ties and maximize the benefits of our partnership.
Moving on from there, also I really want your ideas when it comes to the relationship between Russia and Africa. So how do you describe the ties between Russia and Africa as we speak? How is it improving and where is it now as we speak, sir?
Russia-African ties are based on the time-tested bonds of friendship and cooperation. It is common knowledge that our country has always paid special attention to its relations with Africa. Our country, who has not stained itself with the bloody crimes of colonialism, has always sincerely supported Africans in their struggle for liberation from colonial oppression, provided practical and often gratuitous assistance to the peoples of the continent in the formation of their statehood, creation of the foundations of national economies, defense capabilities built up, and training of qualified personnel. We did not suspend our political dialogue with Africa even in the 1990s when Russia was faced by numerous problems itself. We developed cooperation in personnel training, helped African states maintain their defense capabilities and resolve our problems. Today, we stand in solidarity with the African demands to complete the process of decolonization and support relevant initiatives on the United Nations platform. For sure, the current geopolitical situation requires certain adjustment of the mechanisms of our interaction. First of all, there is a question of ensuring seamless logistic and tuning the system of financial settlements to make them secure from the outer interference. In cooperation with its partners, Russia takes steps to enhance the use of national currencies and payment systems. We are working to gradually reduce the share of dollar and euro in mutual trade. We stand generally for establishing an efficient financial system that is proof against the potential impact from the unfriendly states. The task of bringing Russian and African economic operators to each other, closer to each other, to help them enter each other markets and encouraging them to participate in large-scale infrastructural projects also comes to the fore. We assume that the second Africa-Russia summit will facilitate settling these and other tasks. I would like to make special mention of our growing trade that is objectively facilitated by the creation of the African Continental Free Trade Area. We are interested in promoting our joint efforts, including high technological areas like the nuclear power industry, the peaceful exploration of space, and the introduction of modern digital technology.
Talking about the summit, the second Russian-African summit, which is going to be held late July, what should we expect out of this huge summit? What are some of the things that you see that we should expect, sir?
Well, I'm sure that just like the first Russia-African summit, which was held in 2019, the forthcoming summit will give a boost to our ties in many areas. The first Russia-Africa summit in October 2019 in Sochi raised Russia-Africa interaction to a new level. The frequency of political contacts has increased, including the interparliamentary dialogue, which has become more intensive. As a result of the first summit, a weighty package of agreements was signed for a total amount of more than 1 trillion Russian rubles. I am certain that the scale and intensity of the upcoming summit and the relevant events will be the same as of the first summit in Sochi 4 years ago. We are planning to discuss promising areas and programs for further cooperation and prepare specific mechanisms for implementation while in Russia's northern capital. We believe the results of the St. Petersburg summit will provide a vector for the development of our relations in the next few years and help us outline new plans aimed at expanding the constructive cooperation between our country and our African partners in the political, trade, economic, scientific and technological, humanitarian and other areas. I am convinced that our major goal should be to turn Russian-African cooperation into a strategic partnership. Of course, we will achieve this goal. Let me reiterate again that Russia is ready not only to demonstrate its interest in Africa, but also to bring all-round and real progress in our long-standing partnership with the continent, which has a truly great future.
In your view, how should the relationship between Russia and Africa continue in the future, especially, in a way that should not be in a donor or recipient sphere, rather than based on mutual benefit, mutual cooperation, mutual help? How should the bilateral ties between the two sides continue, sir?
Well, we recognize the importance of developing robust partnerships with African nations, a region that holds immense potential and significance based on the principles of mutual respect, shared benefits and common development. Through initiatives like the Russia-Africa Summit, we have already laid the foundation for a new era of cooperation. We have witnessed the strengthening of trade and investment ties, the expansion of cultural exchanges, and the nurturing of people-to-people connections. However, we believe there is still much more that can be achieved together and should be done together. In this respect, the second Russia-Africa Summit holds particular significance, serving as a platform for dialogue, collaboration, and the exploration of new avenues for partnership between Russia and Africa. What should be specifically emphasized is that we are offering the strategy of equality. Democracy is not only for domestic consumption. The principle of the United Nations Charter, the sovereign equality of states, applies to the international arena. The Russian Federation does not impose anything on anyone or tells others how to live. We treat with great respect the sovereignty of the African states and their inalienable right to determine the path of their development for themselves. We are firmly committed to the African solutions to African problems principle. Such an approach to developing interstate ties dramatically differs from the master-slave logic imposed by former metropolitan countries, which reproduces the obsolete colonial model, which believe they have right to impose their domestic rules on others. Although unprecedented by its scale, the pressure from beyond has not brought our friends to join the anti-Russian sanctions. In this context, I would like to thank our Russian partners that they have not allowed themselves to be drawn into the anti-Russia hysterical campaign and have held a balanced position on the European security crisis. Such an independent path deserves deep respect.
Let me take you back to the relationship between Russia and Ethiopia. So I want to ask you this question, sir. What does Ethiopia mean to Russia? What specifically does it mean, especially as a window to the continent of Africa?
Well, really, Ethiopia holds a unique place in the continent, boasting a rich history, remarkable cultural diversity, and a vision for economic growth and development. We also recognize Ethiopia's strategic importance in promoting peace, stability, and progress in the region. Its role as a diplomatic capital of the continent, the country hosting the African Union headquarters. Throughout the long history of our bilateral relations, based on traditions of friendship, mutual respect and trust, Ethiopia has been and remains one of Russia's key partners in Africa. Having stood the test of time, we can say that our cooperation has strengthened and has now taken on a multifaceted, mutually beneficial partnership character. For many decades, our countries and peoples have been linked by strong ties of friendship despite of countries' geographical distance. It would not be an exaggeration for me to say that our bilateral relations are developing dynamically and in a very positive way. The basis of our dialogue with Ethiopia is a joint, ongoing, regular work, as well as a timely checking the clock on the most pressing issues of both regional and global nature. The constant search for new points of contact. We are very grateful to our Ethiopian partners for the positive response to many of our initiatives, and we are very enthusiastic about their desire to deepen bilateral cooperation. I am proud of the cooperation between our two countries on international and regional issues. Russia and Ethiopia share identical or similar approaches towards major world problems, and we are thankful to our Ethiopian partners for supporting Russian initiatives in the United Nations and other international organizations. Ethiopia is one of our key partners in Africa, with which we strive to work together to address common challenges, elaborate shared solutions, and contribute to the well-being of both nations. It is important to continue to actively cooperate with the aim of strengthening the role of multilateral institutions such as the United Nations, African Union, and other regional organizations. By supporting the principles of multilateralism, both countries can work together to address global challenges and transnational security threats, promote peace and stability, and advocate for the interests of developing nations. Today, we live in a very complicated and unpredictable environment, where we face the challenges not only of pandemic, but also of subsequent economic implications, the aspirations of certain countries to preserve a unipolar world and deny multipolarity in all its manifestations, the attempts to rewrite our common history and change our major traditional values, impose neo-colonial policies, launch information and proxy wars against their opponents. We should and we must speak up and defend the truth and the good case. And only through close cooperation can we fight these threats to ensure peaceful and sustainable development for our nations.
Thank you, Ambassador. My final question would be, what is expected from African countries in a bid to reinforce their bilateral and multilateral ties with Russia?
As I have already previously mentioned, we never lecture our foreign partners on how they should live. We do not have a hidden agenda or double standards, especially in our relationships with the African countries. We are building our interstate interaction on the principles of international law, equality, mutual respect, and consideration of interests of our partners. We believe that this creative approach appeals to Africans and not only them. All normal countries find it attractive. And of course, we have a lot to offer to our African friends, including assistance in ensuring national security and meeting their humanitarian needs. African countries are interested in Russia's participation in training their professional personnel. We have traditionally strong positions in this area. Russian higher education has been in great demand among several generations of Africans. This is just a small part of the versatile, mutually beneficial cooperation between Russia and African countries, and we are going to develop it in every possible way. We intend to support further the establishment of Africa as a distinctive and influential center of world development, giving priority to supporting the sovereignty and independence of interested African states, providing assistance in resolving and overcoming the consequences of armed conflicts in Africa based on the principle African solutions to African problems, strengthening and deepening Russian-African cooperation in various spheres on bilateral and multilateral basis, increasing trade and investment with African states and African integration structures, promoting and developing links in the humanitarian sphere.
Russian Ambassador to Ethiopia, Evgeny Terekhin, thank you so much, sir, for your wonderful ideas and for your time.
Thank you for your hospitality.
With that, we come to the end of today's program. Thank you so much for having been with us so far. Until I see you next time with yet another program, it's goodbye from me, Shifa Raulak. Stay safe and take care.